I'm Matt Braunger. This might help.
I am not a doctor.
This might help.
I'm not a professional.
Let's have fun. This honestly is a good time.
Honestly, I got no idea what I'm doing. What's going on? Who are you?
I'm Matt Braunger. This might help. The podcast.
Hey, welcome to This Might Help with Matt Braunger, the playfully stupid advice podcast that you should not base your life on whatsoever. This is for fun, as I always say. If you need clinical help, like I know I get it. I'm not a professional, don't want to be, just a flim-flam artist like most of my guests. Speaking of which, I have a funny comic with me who I know, but I don't know that well. As the mighties, the listeners know, I love having people on the show who I get to know more on the show, who I'm a fan of or whatnot. And we have a lot of mutual friends. I'm good friends with her husband. And who cares about him? Please welcome Rosebud Baker. How are you, Rosebud?
Thank you so much, Matt. Thanks for having me. I
bet.
love that. Who cares about him?
I mean,
Anyway.
really. What a jerk. No, he is one of those guys I definitely dump on because he's the nicest dude and has been through a lot. And he's one of those guys I genuinely like have a great time anytime I talk to him about anything. And so like, I mean, when I found out you were together and because you guys lived, you guys still live in New York City?
We still live there, yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So I don't know who is with who.
Yeah.
Obviously, like, I have a 1-year-old and I only have like few people I see regularly and most of them live around me. So it was one of those things I was like, oh, they're married. It was like, was they together? Oh, they're married. Oh, cool.
Well, that's kind of how quickly it happened too. We got married, we got engaged within 6 months and then got married within like 9 months of dating.
Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's
quick.
awesome. So how are you? How are you doing right now?
I'm good. I'm like, that's a good question. Whenever somebody's like, how are you? I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, good answer.
Yeah. I'm like, I'm good though. I feel like I've been in LA for the last like 42 hours and it's been like running from one thing to another. Because when I come here, I generally like pack it all in a couple of days.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a little bit like, whoa, I got a little bit of activity vertigo, but I feel good.
Mm-hmm. That's good. Yeah. And I feel like, people like us, I think we probably have the same kind of syndrome where if things aren't moving or we don't have things to do, the old brain starts eating itself in a way and picking itself apart. I've watched your act and I feel like, she has that thing that I have, that I feel like most comedians have.
Yeah.
Where I definitely had it like last night where I just kept waking up and my brain kept going, but what about this? And it was literally like someone going, hey, wake up for nothing. Like, it was like, this is nothing to solve now. And also that's in the past. That's done. Why are you bringing that up?
For sure. My favorite thing to do is I have an app called, I think it's called Sleep App it's like an alarm clock that monitors your sleeping patterns so that it'll wake you up during a time when you're not like in REM. But one of the things that it does is it records you sleep talking.
Oh no.
And so I love to wake up in the morning to listen to the full sentences, sometimes 3 or 4 sentences that I'll just go off on, where I sound like I'm in the middle of a business meeting. Like it doesn't sound like I'm sleeping.
Yeah.
It sounds like, I think one of the things the other day was, that's just one of the things that one of the episodes is about, but we never found out what was wrong with that girl. And that was I was like, what?
I would not to project, but I think that's a pretty gosh darn good sleep talk because it sounds like you're the head writer or the showrunner.
Yeah.
And you're explaining the background of a show you've either created or you co-produce. Like listen, it doesn't matter what happened to that character. That's not important for the plot.
That's not why we're meeting.
Can you stop? Can you please just cook us breakfast? Why are you here in this room? The crafty person's like,
yeah.
I have notes.
I'm like, I have a busy day today, and I have 6 more hours to sleep. So let's get the rest of this meeting wrapped up so I can
Right.
sleep.
Yeah, I'm definitely picturing like dudes that they just have these kind of jobs that anyone could do, and God bless them. But I think that's one thing we talked about. The Me Too stuff, generally harassment. We've talked about people being pressured into sex. We've talked about women in power being looked down upon. We haven't talked about the dudes that just give notes unsolicited to women and on higher creative levels, and
Oh
they
yeah,
would never to a man. They would never to a male director. They would never to a male head writer. But there's a
yeah,
woman there, and she's being friendly to everyone. And a guy's like, you know what you should do? I got it. Look, hold on.
yeah,
Let me just
yeah.
corner you for a second. We're both by the coffee machine.
Let me give you this.
Like
Yes,
that's not disgust.
right. I know. And I think it's all over. I think that actually happens. I think it happens to women in a different way, but there's people all over the entertainment industry that don't do what we do, that think they know it better.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, that's. I mean, anytime people find out how much money someone can make when they get to a certain level, and they go like, "Well, I'd do that." Why are they making all that money? And it's like, well, because we stuck with our unions. I don't know what to tell you. And also, it's also a rarefied air.
Hmm.
90% of us will never get there.
Right,
There are other ways to make money. Thank Christ for the road. But
right.
it's just this thing where people, and also comedy, everyone thinks they can do comedy. Everyone, you know,
Everybody. Yeah.
everybody. No,
It-
nobody really watches the Academy Awards and is just like, I act better than him. My cousin. He can be more serious than that guy.
yeah, they all go. I think it's the least respected art form, which
Sure.
is I almost prefer that than to
Hmm.
be an artist that is super snobby about what they do, you
Right.
know? Like
Right.
I'd rather be that than like a pianist that
Yeah.
is, I would just rather say that. I'd rather say comic or clown than like I'm a pianist, you know?
Yeah, and I think being a pianist, you have to have just a savage amount of zen.
Yeah.
You have to have so much inner calm. And I feel like there are those comics. Like I think that's what made Eddie Murphy so good is he had this deep well of confidence, even at 18.
Hmm.
Even if it was faked, I've still in my life never seen confidence like that on a stage.
Yeah.
But that's not us, generally speaking. We're
Yeah.
generally kind of manic,
Hmm.
and we build this thing and look at my toy I built,
Right.
and that sort of thing. But yeah, I agree with you. I like it that way. I would rather have someone think they could do my job better than me on a regular
Yeah.
basis than
I
you
think I have a confidence that is, I think I'm confident in a way that is rebelling against my gut feelings about myself, but it wasn't something I had when I was born. It was something
know.
that I developed because I had to, because
Yeah.
everything that I ever tried to do went wrong, like terribly wrong.
Yeah, but you're very real on stage, and your jokes are very well written. I haven't seen your whole special, but I've seen like 5 or 6 just standalone joke clips from it that I really enjoy. Where I was like, oh my god, it's really good insight to who you are, and it's also really well written, which is
Oh, thank you.
it's hard to do both those things. Really hard.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, where did you grow up? I don't really know your history.
So I grew up in DC, like right outside of DC in Northern Virginia, or Nova, as people around that area call it.
Okay.
And it was like a suburban, it's a very like Northern Virginia is like the highest concentration of wealth in America.
Huh.
And
Okay.
it was a very affluent place. Like if you didn't get a car for your birthday, like you were poor.
Sure.
That's like where I lived.
Okay.
And I remember feeling like, so I came from a very like political family. My granddad worked in the White House. My dad was a lawyer at his dad's law firm. And it
Hmm.
was kind of like Succession. It was like this Succession world. And my mom, who was a painter and an artist, like gave up her painting to raise 5 kids and me and my 4 younger sisters. And so it was just like that kind of world. It was like a country club world, you know?
Ah, yeah.
And I was this like circle shaped, pudgy kid that just like was a goof. Like I was always kind of a goofball.
Hmm.
I didn't I wasn't trying to make people laugh, but I made
Ah,
people laugh
yeah.
by accident. And it always hurt my feelings when they did. Always.
Huh.
Like I was super sensitive. Um anytime anytime somebody, if I did something that got a laugh, I never thought like, let me do that again, repeat that. It was always like, I'm going to carry this shame with me for the rest of my life.
Oh, it that is the thing I think about with my kids so often is like I just don't, because she has bit Kara and bit me, and like it's just I think she does it when she's excited, and so
Yeah.
she's now in daycare, and she's bitten one kid, and then they're like she just does it out of nowhere, and she does. It's like a vampire. Like I'm happy, like just changes and goes after you, and so my thing was like, oh fuck, I feel bad for those kids. And now I heard the big one was they someone like brought their baby. There's a
Yeah.
baby daycare, and my daughter's 1, like so she's barely walking. And Rose like took her foot and was gonna bite it, but all the kids were like, no, Rose. So it's like this, it's like a village, and it's really sweet. And
Oh,
that was like a balm for my soul because my biggest fear was like, I don't want her ostracized.
yeah.
I would crush me if like all the kids were treating her bad,
Right.
because I was that kid, and as you said, you were that kid,
Yeah.
and it hurts so deep. It
Yeah.
hurts so deep when
And
you're
it's,
young, coming out of a loving household, and then kids are mean to you. I remember my friend, and to this day, I don't know if he made this up because he was an asshole in 7th grade, but he was like, "Hey, I asked the girls why don't they like you? The girls." He asked
yeah.
all the girls,
That's
and, and he said, and they
the
said,
entire population of girls.
yeah, and he's like, and they said because you're fat and stupid, like, and stupid meaning like you say stupid things. Because I would try to get attention, I would try to joke, but it was like that crushed me. But it
Yeah.
didn't crush me like when a bunch of kids were making fun of me together or wouldn't play with me. It's like, oh, the
I remember
worst.
that so well because I was, when you were growing up in the 90s and you were like even a little bit like what we would call like thick now or like
Sure.
curvy, like it didn't matter if you were not a stick thin woman. Even as a child in the 90s, you were called
Hmm.
fat.
Yep.
And I remember my sister like sitting next to me in the back of the car. And she goes, I somebody at my school called you fat today, but I told them that you were just big boned. And then she handed me
Oh.
her empty chips and said, I finished these, but you can smell the wrapper.
No. Holy shit. I'm being nice to you. Like she should have just said I'm being nice to you after that.
Yes. And she still is like that. Like that's the way she is. You know what I mean? And she thinks she's being nice. And you're like, you need to see someone. Like,
Yes. Oh,
yeah,
I don't know. Do you watch reality TV at all? Like any
not really. No.
Okay. My wife got me on Vanderpump Rules,
Hmm.
which I enjoy because I used to work in bars, and it's the most pirate ship like incestuous thing, and that's
Right.
all they do is they like we love each other so much, and there's someone like I'm kind of mad at her, and they all get drunk, and it becomes a knife fight, and then
Yes.
the rest of like the next 3 episodes are them dissecting it and splitting into warring factions, and that's like I remember those days, and it's a lot like high school, but then you have sometimes we watch the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, and it's just like that, but they have
Yeah.
all the money in the world. They're the 1% of the 1% of the 1%, and they still do the same shit. They go, look, guys, let's squash the beef. let's have a couple drinks. They get lit as shit. They're all 60, and
Yeah.
then a knife fight breaks out, and then they split into warring factions.
Yeah.
And it's like that there's this episode where the one black member of the Real Housewives was talking about like they're all being she starts calling them out. There's her and an Asian woman, and they're kind of like, you don't do that thing where you're like, I don't see color, right? And then someone's like, well, I believe that I don't. And she's like, well, if you don't see my color, you don't see me. And the woman's like, like just stuck. And
Yeah.
then she's like, well, she literally is saying she's had every color of employee working in her home. That was her thing. And I've employed them and treated them well. And the woman's patiently listening.
Oh,
And this
God.
is, they all kind of talk about themselves, but this one, she goes through the prism of herself, no matter what it is. She was
Yeah.
like, no, if I was named Rosebud, I would, it's that where you're like, what the fuck? I don't care. It's my name.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
talking. Are you interviewing me about my special whiskey fists, or what?
Yeah.
What are you doing here?
She walks out, it's raining. She's like, this is my fault.
No, it's like the rain is in my honor, which is interesting. Like it's
Right.
that kind of thing.
Right.
So this woman just cannot talk about things unless it's about herself. So I think like your sister and a lot of people that I've known did that thing where it's just and like deep down they're like, I let her smell the bag.
Right. Yeah.
Hey,
Like, bravo to me. Yeah. I'm
I
a
did
good
it.
person. I'm
I did a good thing.
person. Yeah. She does that a lot. And it's like, you get to an age, I think, with your family where you're like, well, this is the one I got. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And that's kind of where I'm at with her. I'm just
absolutely.
like, it's fine.
Yeah, and I've had serious political differences with certain members of my family, and I'm glad that like I never kind of got in their face about it, because I've also, as I've gotten older, had real human moments with them and their families, and it's kind of been like, okay, like I'm glad I didn't, put my sword in the sand and go, you're being ridiculous, even though I sincerely believe they were, kind of thing. And
Yeah.
it's just, if I can't be friends with someone who is, that, but
Yeah.
if you're in my family, I'm not going to change your mind in 1,000 years. So I'm not
Right.
going to waste my efforts.
Yeah. I'm a strong proponent of you can accept your family without being close to them. And that's where I've gotten to. I'm like,
Yeah.
there's certain members of my family that I think I would be close to whether we were family or not. And those are the
Mhm.
ones that I keep in my life.
Yeah.
And the ones that are not that I just like, I'm like, there's no fixing this. This is like,
No.
you're never gonna see eye to eye, but I accept you, but just not in my space.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm also really lucky that I never had someone who is toxic to me or awful. Because I only say that as a lead in
Mhm.
for the calls, but we've had a lot of calls on this show where someone's like, my dad's dying, or so and so, and we had one that was like, my brother has invited me to his wedding, but all he does is put me down and judge me and is negative to me and makes me feel horrible, to the point where I haven't spoken to him in 3 years, but he's invited me to his wedding. And me and my guests were like, no, you don't have to do anything. Do
Yeah.
you want to go? No.
Right.
Then don't. There's
Right.
no, and he just sounded like a massively passive aggressive. He sounded like those people in your life, you go, you're exhausting. You're just exhausting
Yeah.
for you,
And
for your benefit.
It's funny how we use those situations where like it's so easy to say no to going to a wedding, but it's after that, it's like the work of it is, how hard am I going to have to work to not generate a bunch of guilt around this?
Yeah.
Like, how
Yeah.
hard am I going to have to work to just be like, that's okay, to really be okay with
Mm.
saying I'm not going to go, and I respect you and I wish you well, like, but without feeling like you're a bad person, or
Right.
starting to do that thing where you set a boundary and then you let the person cross it until you're mad at them, but you let them do it over and over.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, it's funny you nailed that. The things that I genuinely regret in terms of certain relationships, where I was just like, they said the one thing, but I knew what it was, and I still let it go because
Right.
of what they said, kind of
Mhm.
thing. It's like
Yeah.
we have this contract, right? But then they kept, and it's like that's on me.
Yeah.
Should have walked away
Yeah.
for both of us, for
Yeah.
both our sakes. You
I've
know,
I've been there so many times.
absolutely,
So many. I
absolutely.
remember one time somebody said something to me. It was an ex of mine, and I don't want to go into too much detail, but what he had said was essentially um, one of the worst things that had ever happened to me.
Hmm.
He inferred that I deserved it, that he understood why it happened to me, and I, I remember hearing that and being like, if I tell anybody that he said that, they're all gonna tell me to leave him. I really can't move right now. Like I can't deal with moving. And so I I stayed I stayed in this like relationship with this person, and I was just like, yeah, it's like what's worse, New York City real estate or just catching an abusive uh like phrase every once in a while, because either way you're being abused. That was like
Yeah,
how I
that's
said
funny.
to myself.
And it's not entirely wrong. I mean, I could see myself making the same conclusion. I had a joke that was, you ever stayed in a relationship in Chicago a year too long for the warmth, and
Right.
it's not really the warmth. It's the familiarity. It's the comfort. But
Yeah.
I mean, the love was gone. I really
Right.
dug this person a lot, but it was that, and it was so in a sense, it is the warmth. But yeah, I mean, it drives me crazy anytime someone's in an abusive or unhealthy situation and outsiders are like, I would have been gone, out,
Yeah.
gone, man. I mean, me, listen, someone pulls a gun, I go into shark brain. What I do is I grab their wrist. It's just everyone is, oh God.
They always have a play by play. They're like, this is exactly what I would do. I've planned this out in my sleep. I know how to take a man down. If the light
Mhm,
is bright or
mhm.
it's dark enough, I can get him from behind the knees.
Yes.
Like,
I mean, my this is very dark, but
mhm,
my worst example of that that I've seen in my lifetime was Don Lemon interviewing that woman who was sexually assaulted by Bill Cosby, who pushed her head to his crotch, and he was like, "Well, it begs the question: why didn't you bite it?" Like, Don,
what?
he said that to a woman. And I used to have, I had a, do you remember that bit, that show? What the hell was it called? I'm blanking on the comedian too. But you have cans on and you can't hear the audience and you're just in a
Yeah.
room with a camera.
Yeah.
Uh, fuck, amazing comedian created it. I'll put it in the description of the show if you guys want to know. But I was just like, I felt a freedom in that where I was like, I'm going to talk about this horrible thing. And I went off on if Don Lemon was in prison and a massive man was like, "You're gonna suck right now. It's just us in this prison cell. You can't do." It's like you wouldn't bite anything. You'd give the
Yeah.
blowjob of your life, Don. Like as would any of us. It's just like, are you out of your? It begs the question. Like, I mean, not only is he not there, he's not a woman.
Yeah.
Not with a powerful man who
Right.
will believe they'll believe him over her 1,000 times out of 1,000.
And even if they didn't believe him over her, he has lawyers that could end her life.
Yes,
End her
yes.
life.
It's worse than getting punched in prison. Like he it was just I couldn't. I mean, and this woman had to answer the question, be like, "Well, of course it crossed my mind, but I was scared, Don." Like Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Like,
And that is so humiliating to like, those are those moments where I look at like the media and I'm just like, how the fuck are you guys not just like, I just don't understand. I remember watching Tanya Harding as a kid. I was like very
yeah,
young, and
sure.
I remember seeing Tanya Harding and Nancy Kerrigan with the whole like, the taking a bat to the knee,
Sure.
and the lack of understanding of the logic of an abuse victim
Right.
around that time there was none. There was nobody
No.
touched themselves, even though there's like video evidence of Tanya Harding and her, like, the cycles of abuse that she'd been through.
Yep.
I go, it's crazy to me that this guy, her ex-husband, ruined her life. Like, she
Right.
was so good.
Right.
She's
Mhm.
the best.
Yes.
And he ruined her life. He took away the only thing that she had.
Yeah.
Take it away from him and then he ended up going to prison anyway. So it was like, it's such an abuser thing where they keep
Yeah.
you close.
Oh, absolutely. And you're guilty by association. It's like you
Mhm.
should have gotten out, and it's like, and everyone judges as if they don't need warmth or a
Mhm.
decent apartment in New York. Everyone judges like they don't need a decent place to live.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
Okay, so hopefully we won't get one of those calls, but if we do, we basically answered it.
But
Just as I tell all the guests, I don't know what's coming. I don't listen to the calls. Renee gets them and picks the winners. So let's roll the first. We're gonna do 3 calls. Let's roll the first one.
Hey, Matt and guest. I was just wondering what advice you have in regards to tipping. Specifically, so like I just went on a trip and I noticed the hotel doesn't come in and clean your room every day. I still kind of just left the standard, or what I thought was the standard, like $5 a day, even though they didn't, come in between each day. But I was staying with a friend and he didn't think that was justified. He thought I didn't really need to leave a tip if they didn't come by. I was wondering what your thoughts on that. And specifically, one specific question I was wondering about that we had a debate about was if you order a very high-end shot at the bar, like let's say the shot is $100, but it's literally just a shot of some high-end bourbon or whiskey or whatever, like it's not a fancy mixed cocktail, do you still tip the bartender, the standard 20% or whatever it is, or would you just give him like $1 or $2 because it was quote unquote low effort because he was just taking it off the shelf? I say you still tip the 20% because if you're spending that much money, you should be willing to, or you should have the budget to pay that 20%. So he says he shouldn't because it was low effort. Neither one of us have been bartenders, or waiters or anything like that. So we're just kind of coming at it, we're both kind of inexperienced. So I was wondering what your thoughts, if you were a bartender or in your bartending days, what would you expect in that scenario? All right. Love the show. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thanks for calling, man. Great asks. Rosebud, I'll let you take the first crack.
Okay, so I was thinking, the first thing that I thought was, with the housekeeping, leaving the $5 a day standard, I don't see the harm in that. Even if it's like they didn't, I understand the friend's logic where it's like they didn't come by, so why do that? But then I thought, well, there's not a lot of people doing that, like leaving the standard $5 a day or just leaving a big tip. And it's like, do it. Why not? There's nobody, you're not hurting anybody. And
Right.
I think, like, as for the booze thing, I was like, interesting, because you're overspending. You're definitely overspending already.
Yeah.
But again, the bartender probably needs that cash more than the company that you're paying. So I'm kind of like, again, you're not hurting anybody unless you have a family that is really strapped for cash and you're out here acting like the CEO of a multi-million-dollar corporation. I think it never hurts to tip more. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, I err on the side. I tend to over tip, and a little tip that I've given on the show, I believe, that I learned from a book that a guy I got to know a little bit wrote, called Heads in Beds, and it's like the Kitchen Confidential of hotels, because he worked as a host in all kinds of fancy places, and he was like, tip the hosts when you check into a hotel. And if I check into a fancy hotel, I give them a 20 with my credit card and ID. In Vegas, you got to put it next to it. You can't hide money, you
Yeah.
know. But they go, thank you, and then they look for a better room for you. So you basically, there's always empty suites, and they'll just
Right.
be like, let's just put this guy in here,
Yeah.
him and his wife and little baby, and fine, because housekeeping cleans regardless. But yeah, tip housekeeping, and I agree with you. I would get salty if they didn't. I like my room. I just like my bed made. You don't need a vacuum, anything like
Yeah.
that, but just tidy up a little bit. I'll hang the towels up. I'll use the same towels the whole time I'm there.
Yeah.
But yeah, and as far as look, why are you getting
I think I would
$100 shot? Like Rosebud, you're sober. You've been sober how long?
13 years.
Congrats. That's incredible. That's awesome. But yeah, like we're talking what? Johnny Blue, which you want to sip anyway. You don't want to shoot it. But look, okay, if you're like, I like $100 shot, it's baller move. I would tip at least 5. Don't tip 1. You don't necessarily have to tip $20. I kind of err on the side, but at the same time, you're right. Tip
Right.
the 20%, fuck it. Because what it comes down to is that person remembers you. See, they'll see
Yeah.
you the next time. And when you go to that bar again, they'll be like, my man. And they'll look over everyone because you're VIP, because you use the only currency that matters in that business, which is currency.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Also, I would also get salty if they didn't clean up my room a little bit.
Yeah.
It's the best part of being at a hotel is like
Oh.
always having a clean room.
It's such a pet peeve, especially now that I wake up early in the morning. When I was a scumbag and would sleep in till noon, and I missed the service. I get it, but like, yeah. And then when I come back after like exploring the town I'm in, and I'm like, come on,
Yeah, yeah,
hey.
yeah. Although
But-
I'll be honest, I'm a real piece of shit on the road. I'll sleep in, and then when my room's not clean, I'll still get mad about it.
yeah, but I mean, you stayed up late doing shows. You didn't sleep. You're not sleeping it off. You're
Yeah.
fine. You're
Yeah.
fine. You're doing a healthy thing. The body needs rest, and you don't
Right.
sleep well when you're drunk. Anyway,
Right.
let's do caller number 2.
Hi, my name's Ron. When do you know your jokes have gone too far? Okay, so I like to scare my wife. I make
no.
fake mannequins in our bedrooms, and she walks
That's
in
not- no.
thinking, thinking she's about to get attacked. It's hilarious. It's me, our 7-year-old, and her, and I'm just wondering when you think some of those go too far, because she's sleeping in the car sometimes. She drove her 30 miles, and then it's my turn to drive 200 miles. And she's falling asleep. And I do one of those things. I grab her knee, and I go, ah! And she wakes up in a complete panic, and I'm laughing. That's just right on the cusp of too far. But is there, I don't know, I'm asking, is there a scaring too far? Because she's trying to divorce me. And that's it. Is there too far with the scaring? I saw recently there was a guy who put a fake snake behind his wife on the trail. And it followed her and she ran from it, but it stayed with her. Yeah, absolutely far. I'm just wondering, is there too far as a scare joke on your wife?
Wow. Yeah, there is.
I hate that his 7-year-old had to listen to him make that message.
Yeah, he was definitely trying to say it under his breath and quiet, but it's like you're just sounding creepier.
It sounded like he had a knife in a closet that entire time.
I think it's like every episode I have to pick like a clip that I have the social media person for the Laugh Button podcast network caption. I think I'm
Yeah.
just going to do that call up until she's talking about divorce because it's just a boom. The ending is so good
Yeah.
that it's just, it's just, yeah. I think that's when you've gone too far, when you've messed with the person's mental health and they can't
Yeah.
live with you anymore. That's
Yeah.
my call.
I think it's so funny that she's gonna have to be like, well, they're like, why do you want to divorce this guy? She's like, honestly, pranks. Pranks. Did it.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. And
it's
I just
so mean.
I see the kindly old judge that's like, well, I like a little gentle ribbing. Now what kind of pranks we mean? A mannequin
Yeah.
made to look like a dead woman next to me in bed. He goes and hides in the bathroom. He drives very close to trucks that are being hauled backwards. They look like they're headed our way, and he screams and even dumps water in his crotch. Before he screams, it looks like he's peed himself from fear.
Yeah.
I'm a healthy woman. I had a minor heart attack while we were in this situation. And the judge is like, granted. Like, divorce granted.
I mean, that's the craziest shit I've ever heard. Just like, yeah, sometimes I like to scare her within an inch of her life. And sorry, I got to keep it down. My 7-year-old's sleeping in the back.
Yeah, I never got. I mean, I understand a good prank, but it's like I'm not pranking. It just always seems so fucking mean to me, generally speaking. I got such a kick out of it when there's an article about like Clooney and his crazy pranks, like sending breakfast to your room at 5 a.m. when they just wrapped at 2 a.m. Like, I can't get back to sleep, George.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you. But how Kevin Kline was on record going, anytime someone pranks me, I just look at him and go, why would you do that? He's like, what's wrong with you? It's not funny.
What do you want to hurt me?
I feel like shit now. That's not.
Right.
Look, if someone fools me or something and does like, I mean, I guess it depends on the prank, and those pranks just sound fucked up.
I know. I mean, a dead body. I'm just like, you want your wife to think there's a dead woman's body in your room, which means on some level your wife believes that you would hide a dead body in your bedroom, which that really is the baseline problem.
Right. I mean, that's why I love being married to someone who's funny and has a dark sense of humor, because that's the kind of, like, just put me down. Just give me my wife who, like, say I have a pedestrian penis to people. Yeah. Or I'll be on the phone with, and she's like, who are you talking to? And I'm just like, my other family. It's being a lot. They're being a lot. All of them. All 8 of my kids. Something that if you found out, it would be devastating, but it's funny because it's not true.
Yeah. I love that. I love that because it's one of those things where if you have somebody like that in your life and you can do those things, then it's fun. It's sweet. Yeah. I think the answer to this guy's question is it's all in you got to read the room. Yeah. That's how you know.
Yes.
And if she's asking for a divorce, you went too far. That's it.
But you're actually past the barometer because you haven't.
If she could play this voicemail in a courtroom, you've gone too far.
Yeah. And like I could see them being it's like, when is it too far? All right, turn the tape off.
Yeah.
I heard the timbre of his voice. You, ma'am, full custody. Yeah. So, hey, man. First off, sit down and talk to her, and then go from there, and stop doing pranks because they're you're terrorizing this poor woman. And probably your child.
It's horrified. Yeah.
And I don't really believe the mannequin. I don't.
I don't either. I just don't think that this guy. I think he thought of that on the road, and he was. That's a good one. I'll make that up. He's. Because people love to have their fun. And when they're talking to comics, and that just feels like something that that's a made up premise.
Yeah, let me say something insane.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. Okay. Last call. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Roll it.
Hey, I work at a high school, and as a teacher during especially crazy political times, we're supposed to try to set an atmosphere that is limits the amount of political talk that you engage in, I suppose, or I guess there's a fine line as a teacher between your political views, teaching them about history and facts versus sharing your political view. I believe in our district we're allowed to share a political view, but also try to provide information on both sides and give the students some freedom to make the choice in which they think. So I guess my question might be, in a time where that feels especially important to advocate for causes, when does that sort of limitation of being able to either create a safe space or not feeling like you're able to really have your freedom of speech be interfered with your job? Are there other jobs that, you know, have this problem? And I guess what kind of advice would you give to someone who's in a situation where they're feeling a little squashed and trying to express those opinions? Thanks. Bye.
Wow, that's a tough one. I've been getting a lot of calls from teachers these days, and I appreciate you using this as a sounding board to kind of figure things out creatively, because it is the hardest time ever, I think, to be a teacher right now, between COVID and the current argument over, like, what they're calling critical race theory. Off the top of my head, both my parents are teachers. Your job is basically to teach these kids the truth. I think you might just have to cherry pick which truth in certain cases. That's all. But pick the most human stuff, and obviously the stuff that's honest. And let's say a parent complains that, and let's just throw the horseshit argument out the window if you're making white kids feel bad. I went to Harriet Tubman Middle School. I never felt like, we all know history, and if you historically know how things work, there have always been the oppressed and the oppressors, and no one's blaming white children for shit. Never have. Anyway, if some parent complains, have them point out the falsehood, and be as polite as you can. But you sound like an upwardly, like, thoughtful, optimistic person and a good-hearted person. And so I'm not really worried about you, because you also sound very strong, and I need you to realize that and think about that, and just be aware that you've got that going for you. I mean, I feel like I'm a really good judge of character, so take that for what it's worth. And yeah, just you have to teach the truth, or you shouldn't be a teacher. And to answer that one question you had, does this happen in other professions? Yes, but worse. And that's the thing that I think teachers should realize, is that if you worked at an overly corporate gig that doesn't rely on tax funds, you might be forced to say horrible lies. You might be the foreman on a job where you know for a fact that workers are inhaling any number of chemicals, and your job is to tell them it's totally safe. Things like that. And so there's a lot worse. And what you're doing is noble and good, and you're not paid enough.
Yeah.
Sorry to jump in there, Rosebud, but
no,
yeah.
I thought that was great. I think the only thing that I was trying to think when you were giving that advice, which was great.
Thanks.
If I was in that position, what would I do?
Yeah.
And I kind of have to take this approach with, like, family members that I differ from politically. Where I only stick to the facts, like the things that have definitely happened, and so, especially if you're teaching history, your job as a history teacher is to tell a story and to tell the story how it happened. And so if you're always going back to, this is what happened next, and you don't get too caught up in the people's reactions,
Right.
then I think you're doing your job as best you can. as objectively as you can.
Mm-hmm.
It is hard because when you were talking about the two different truths, it's true. Like there's everyone can kind of we're living in a time when people can choose their reality. Like
Yeah, and often do.
and can remove themselves from whatever reality they don't like or that doesn't support their opinion. So I think just to add to what you're saying, Matt, I think like sticking to reality with the facts on the ground and just dealing with that. That I think,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you an example. My dad was at a school that was very progressive in Portland. Surprise, surprise. And there was a teacher there who insisted on teaching out of nothing but Howard Zinn's A People's History of the United States, which is entirely from the perspective of America's workers and people who have traditionally done the worst jobs and the indigenous people. And it's true, and it's horrifically depressing, but it is one perspective, and it is the true perspective, and you have to use some of it. But my dad was just like, you have to use more than that
Right.
to kind of get a nuanced viewpoint. And it's not, and I don't really have a problem with that teacher's angle. I think it is noble and good, but we're talking about seventh graders, and
Yeah.
it's kind of like, well, like I think there's as long as it's true, we just need different, people's perspectives on it. But yeah, I think if you only go from this angle, this area, but I think traditionally we haven't done that area enough. But that's me,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, I agree though, that I mean the way that history was taught to us, uh like there was such a removal from race and privilege and what
Sure.
all of that meant.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why there's such a huge awakening happening right now, is because
Yeah.
we're starting to see what the deal is, that all of this never really went away and that America is very young as a country. And
Absolutely. And also, I think the young people are, for the most part, they're all awake. Like they know it's bullshit, and that's kind of what's driving the people who are loudest about this crazy. Is that in a sense they've lost their kids to what is actually true. I mean, when we were kids, I never knew one kid that was like, yeah, Thanksgiving happened. It was just like that. We knew it was crap. Like
Right.
what? They welcomed us and just showed us how to grow corn, and then was like, take all
Yeah.
our shit. This
Yeah.
is no more fighting. This is great. Like,
Right.
wait, it's this kind of BS. Hold on. Hey, B, can you stop? Sorry, the wife is running water because she's angry at me. No, she didn't. I think none of us realize how loud sinks are. I know anytime I'm on the phone with like my dad, he just starts trying to put dishes away so quiet, and my mom will just scream from the other phone, like, John, stop! Like he just can't. Like my dad's thing is if he was anywhere near like a full sink and they had a gun on him, they like, don't put any of those dishes in the dishwasher. He would try to sneak one. He'd get shot in the arm trying to put a coffee cup in the top rack.
Point gun takes him down.
He'd just be itching, be like fucking Pookie in New Jack City with a vial of crack in front of him.
Podcasting and Andy's putting away a dish,
Oh,
and I'll be like, "Hey, can you please, can you wait?" And I'll watch him like slowly. I'm just like, I'm spending the rest of the podcast just fuming, just silent, fuming at him.
yeah. And it's like, we're basically wrapping up with the podcast. And it's always like something like that. What, like a FedEx guy will be, hunk, hunk, hunk. Like they usually just leave a box, and he'll just like, you know what? I'm going to kick the door. I'm angry today. You have a box. He'll scream that,
Yes.
Wife, can you hear my wife yelling on the phone now?
Wait.
I just hear, as I say that, I hear, oh, sorry, right. I thought we, like all of a sudden she's Trump in front of the helicopter. What? You? Go ahead. Okay.
Paper towels at a hurricane.
Caller, hope that helps you. And Rosebud, you have Whiskey Fists out on Amazon Prime now.
No, it's my new special. It's on Comedy Central's YouTube page.
Comedy Central's YouTube. I'm so sorry.
Good. If you go to YouTube and you go to Rosebud Baker Whiskey Fists,
Okay.
you can watch the whole special. I hope everyone will watch it and enjoy it. I'm pretty proud of it. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I can't wait to watch the whole thing because I love the clips. Also, hey, I'm taping my new special October 3rd, plug, at Zany's Nashville, where you taped yours.
That's so great. They are the best. They treat me so well. They made it good, and yeah, I can't recommend them enough. They're awesome.
That's dope. Yeah, I've played it twice now, at least once. But yeah, that club is epic, and doing it with the 800-pound gorilla guys, just like you. So good bunch. Anything else? Thank you. You too. Anything else you want to plug before we go?
If people are, we got podcast listeners here. If people want another podcast, I have a podcast with my husband, Andy Haynes, called Find Your Beach Podcast. You can listen to that wherever. It's very silly. It's funny. Yeah, that's it.
Sweet.
You can follow me on social media at Rosebud Baker.
Awesome. Okay, well, I will see you around, hopefully.
Yes,
and enjoy the rest of your time in La La Land, and say hi to Andy for me, and congrats on everything.
Well, thanks for having me, Matt.
You bet.
I'll talk to you soon.
All right, buddy. See ya. Man, Rosebud Baker rocks. I love her so much. If you haven't called in yet, you should. Call me. Leave a message for me and my guest at 323-763-0228. 323-763-0228. And thanks.
This Might Help with Matt Braunger was created and hosted by me, Matt Braunger. Produced by Outer Circle Media. Executive producers Matt Kleinschmidt and Robert Kelly for the Laugh Button Podcasts.